You know, you plan and you plan and you plan and you hope that everything works out. But you know, sometimes it doesn't, but you go from plan A to plan B. Well, our guest speaker tonight was Dr. Yellis, and he is in charge of a 98-year-old aunt in California, and he was called out of town Thursday, okay? But we have the best pinch hitter around, okay? So this veteran entered the military in 1968, shortly after graduating from high school. I did the same thing. At the age of 19, he was flying helicopters in the United States Army. Went to Vietnam shortly after his 20th birthday and flew Cobra helicopters flying over 250 combat missions and was shot down twice. Gale has PTSD. He has worked with veterans in South Dakota as a mentor. After moving to Bonterra, he became interested in Camp Hope after his community took a bus trip to tour the facilities. Immediately, he knew that he needed to pitch in and help. So please welcome Gale Johnson, a great American veteran and a great person. Gale? By the way, he has presented this program today at lunchtime, so this is not his first rattle out of the box, okay? So enjoy the evening.
Can you hear me? Okay. All right. Guess I'm going to title my talk tonight as The Unseen Wounds of War, Untreated Trauma. There's 300,000 veterans in the Houston area. There's 71,000 Vietnam veterans in the Houston area. We have a brochure here. I have 3 different brochures, and we'll have those pass around. You can take one if you like. But one says that there's 22 suicides a day amongst veterans. They've done a deep dive study, and now they know that there's over 44 a day. That's 44 suicides a day in the United States of combat veterans, or not just combat veterans, but all veterans. So that's a lot. And the thing that most people don't realize is over half of those are Vietnam veterans. Still. And we're only 1/3 the population. So what's the deal? Well, we didn't get treated so good when we came home. And then we went on and we didn't ask for help. And believe it or not, they're still not asking for help today. So I'm kind of making it my mission to find as many Vietnam veterans, and with your help, hopefully you can pass them on to me that can use some help. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. I graduated from high school in 1968, in June of 1968, and by January of 1969, I was at Fort Walters, or Fort Polk, Louisiana for my basic. Then I went immediately to flight school at Fort Walters, Texas, and then I finished up at Fort Rucker, Alabama, and then I was the top of the class, so they sent me on to fly Cobra helicopters. So at 19 years old, I was flying the fastest helicopter in the world with the most armament, heavily armed piece of equipment that could be transported from one place to the next in combat situations. My draft number was 16. So I immediately went to a recruiter after I graduated and asked if there was anything I could do besides be a grunt. And he said, well, you can fly helicopters. I said, I don't even know what a wing is. How am I going to fly helicopters? He said, we'll teach you. So I went from high school to flight school to Vietnam. I did fly 250 combat missions, and I did get shot down twice. And I'm going to pass this around. Now, this is not the braggadocious, okay? This is one of the helicopters I got shot down in, if you want to just pass it. And I'd like to get this back at the end of the day, so if you could pass that around. I saw and did a lot of crazy stuff in a year. By the way, I got to show you something. How many guys have their original Army, Navy, Marine picture? You know, with your hat. You're kind of skinny and yeah, don't have any gray hair. Okay. Well, this was my first flight suit. Yeah, I got it. This was my first flight suit. I graduated from high school, and I soloed, and they threw me in the pool at Fort Walters in this. So I was lucky to keep that. I still got my original green duffel bag too, RA 6802703. And you guys got your numbers memorized still? RA 680-72603. We got that drilled into us, didn't we? I also have a bullet that was taken out of the transmission from the other helicopter I was shot down, and I was rescued both times. So I spent a year. I did 2 basic 6-month tours. I was there a year. And when I came home, my friends ridiculed me. I was a baby killer. High school kids, you know. I'm now 21 years old, and you know, it was really tough. It was hard on me. I didn't really understand why they were thinking that way, because I was very patriotic and I wanted to serve my country. Some of you guys, if you're in the VFW, you're not going to think this happened, but I went to the VFW in Rapid City to join, and the World War II guy said, "You guys lost the war, you're not welcome here." That happened to me. So you can see my mindset and how things are going here. I could go to any VFW now because they're all Vietnam vets. So, and I would. I got married to my first wife in 1972, and by 1978 I had 3 boys. And in 1975, when our Afghanistan deal happened, Operation Eagle, when we pulled out of Vietnam, I was so ticked off. I was angry. I saw all my buddies that died, saw all my friends that came home with one arm gone, one leg gone, and we just pulled out of Vietnam. And just recently we did the same thing in Afghanistan. It just drives me crazy. I was angry, really angry. And a lot of bitterness has started working up inside of me, and I took all my Vietnam memorabilia that I could find, except for that flight suit and a few other things I didn't find, fortunately. But I took everything, all the wooden helicopters I bought in Vietnam that were hand carved, I took everything out in the backyard and I burned it. That's how angry I was. And I wasn't really a alcoholic or a drugaholic, because I didn't do that stuff. But I was a workaholic. I worked to forget. There were many, many, many times that I would work 3 days straight, 72 hours, without putting my head in the bed, just to keep from having to think about the stuff. I was a workaholic. I wasn't home a lot. I delved into him. And here's the problem with my work. I couldn't focus between the time I got home from Vietnam and until I actually got help. I had 20 or 30 jobs. I just couldn't stay focused. And that wasn't good for my family, wasn't good for my wife. My wife had grown up in an alcoholic family, so she had her problems. And I had my problems, and between the two of us, we had nothing but chaos in the household. I haven't spoken to my oldest son for 30 years. My second son, and this is hard for me, is in a psychiatric hospital. And my third son's homeless. So the wounds of war, the unseen wounds of war go deep. And they go into your kids too. If you're not, and I call it, what I say, it's untreated trauma. If this trauma that you have, even if it's a rape from, if you ladies that were raped, the trauma needs to be treated. You need to speak with somebody, you need to get that worked out. But I didn't get help until in 1986, I was really desperate. I knew there was something wrong. I had the Patton syndrome though, you know, bunch of wussies that have PTSD, just get back out there and go for it. And that's how I live my life. Is not going to cry about it, not going to worry about it. But it really affected me, and it really affected my family. In 1986, I went the first time to the vet center in Rapid City, and Kenneth Johnson, who was the head of the center, of course there wasn't any PTSD programs then. They just weren't still even talking about it. But they had a girl that had just gotten fresh out of college. She was probably 25, 26 years old. That was the counselor, and she dressed like a hippie. Okay, so you guys and you Vietnam vets understand what hippies are, don't you? They're protesters, and they made your life miserable when you got back. So I lasted 2 sessions with her, and that was in 1986. I didn't go back until 1996. So I spent 10 more years inside my head, denying, lying to myself, not really understanding what PTSD was at all. So in 1996, I had pretty much no family life, really. We were just chaos, total chaos. My kids were all screwed up in drugs and jail and all kinds of stuff. So in 1996, my marriage was just about done. And so I went to the VA, to the new PTSD program. And I went in, and the criteria for being in the program was to be a flaming alcoholic or a flaming drugaholic. But since I wasn't either, they weren't going to let me in the program. So I ended up talking with the head of the program, Dr. Tom Shannon, and he diagnosed me with PTSD. And he said, I'm going to make an exception and let you in the program. And I would not be standing here tonight had I not gotten that help. I spent 4 years weekly going to see Dr. Shannon, and it took me 3.5 years to really get it straight before I could finally say, you know, I've got control of it again. It's miserable. In fact, they had a new operation that they had just come out at the VA at that time. It's called stomioplasty. So they cut a hole in your stomach and put a piece of plexiglass in so you can see when your head's up, see why you're walking around with your head in the dark place. That's a joke. So I got that operation. After 3.5 years, I felt like I could see again, had some light. From 1972 to 1996, I had so many jobs, I couldn't even tell you, I couldn't even give you a resume. I would take a job and I'd work it for 3 months and I'd be so disillusioned. I wasn't making enough, I had all kinds of excuses. But really what it was is I couldn't stay focused. And I knew if I stayed at the job, I'd either get fired or whatever, so I'd quit before I'd get fired. So I never got fired from the job, that's why, because I quit and went and did something else. So I was just never satisfied. I married this lovely lady down here with the pink hat on. She's on her phone. Not listening to me? She's the most beautiful thing I've ever come across. I love her. And after my counseling and I met her, I have been married to her for 23 years now. And after my counseling, after my trauma was treated, I had the same job for 23 years. Okay? So, that's something. So, she helped me raise my fourth son, who was about 9 years younger than it, and he's doing fine. Okay? So, untreated trauma, PTSD is not, I mean, if I was in a wheelchair up here tonight, you'd say, oh, he's in a wheelchair, he had something bad happen to him. But with PTSD, it's unseen. And the Camp Hope has 120 guys in the program. They go through 4 phases. They come in the black phase, and these guys are very desperate individuals. They're really, really clawing at life, trying to stay afloat. Most of them are homeless. They've had a bad time, combat-wise and life-wise. Divorces, marriage, or children taken away from them, and all kinds of stuff. The stories are just constant. I mean, you can have them. So they go through 4 phases. They go through the black phase, and then they go to the green, or to the red, yellow, and green phases. And they have to perform different tasks to go from phase to phase. It takes 6 months to 9 months to get through it. Jake Salzman, one of the guys at Hartford, oh, by the way, I'm the commander of the Bonterra Veterans Club now. And we had our meeting today like this during the day. And I have spent the last 15, 20 years of my life working with homeless people. I was with the South Dakota State Veterans Court, which is like the DUI court or drug court, where the veterans that come into the court system are dropping through the cracks. They're in and out of jail and struggling. The vet court in South Dakota, what they do is they bring them in and then they give a mentor. So we would mentor with them, and I did that quite often. So I see we moved down here to retire. We have a bus tour to Camp Hope. You guys could do the same thing if you want to see the place. They rented a bus and threw about 30 or 40 of us on the bus, and we went over and visited. I knew immediately when I got there I was amongst people that I could identify with. And I felt really at home there. Even though I'd never been through a program like that, I could see right away these guys there was a lot of camaraderie, and they were just getting along really good. So the black, we talk about the phase. The black phase, they come in, they're stripped of everything. They don't have a phone, they don't have a car, they can't go anywhere for 30 days. If they can get through that, and they get a one-on-one mentor from a guy who's already been through the program. So it's a peer-on-peer program. They make it, they're not told they have to stay there. They can leave any time. And if they leave, they can come back 30 days later, but they're gone for 30 days. So they're not ever kept out. Some guys have gone through the program 2 or 3 times. So they go through the black phase, and they really have to undress their mind. They have to just divest themselves of all the problems they've got. They work through, they write out their stories, their biologies, and everything like that. Once they get through the black phase, they go into the green phase, or the red phase, and then they get to go into a different building. There's 5, 6 guys to a unit there. And they're fed 3 times a day, 5 days a week, and then they have kitchens, and on the weekends they're on their own. A really nice facility, it's 5 acres. These 120 guys are there for that red phase, and then the yellow phase, they get a little more freedom, they can go off campus and stuff like that. And then the green phase is when they've gotten through all the hard stuff and they graduate. And the green phase is the time that they do, they look for jobs. They get, you start getting back into into the life of a better way of doing things. That's pretty much what happens to him. So, I want to tell you the story about Joseph in the Bible is one that always gets me. Joseph, the youngest son of Isaac, is that right? Jacob has 12 sons, and Joseph is the youngest. And he is severely treated by his older brothers. They throw him in a pit and they're going to kill him. They take his cloak and fill it with blood and take it back to his father and tell him he was killed. They sent him into Egypt in chains as a slave. He spent years upon years in Egypt in jail. He suffered, did all kinds of crazy things to him, and all that time he had his faith in God. And at the end of that time, his brothers were in a famine in Israel, and they came down to Egypt to get food, and he was the highest ranking person in all of Egypt. And he disguised himself from his brothers when they first came. And I'm not going to go through the whole story, but they sent him back, and they came back again with the younger brother. And when he finally opened up to them and said to them, you know, all this was meant for evil. Everything you did to me was meant for evil, but God meant it for good. So all the things we go through our whole life, every step we take is already known. We just have to turn ourselves over to the Redeemer, to God, and give ourselves over to Him, and then He takes us in the right course and straightens us out. And I understand that I went through all I went through, and it's been horrible. But I have spoken. The only one I haven't spoken to is my oldest son, but I have a bit of a relationship going with my other two sons, and I have a great relationship with my youngest son. So untreated trauma is bad. Treated trauma is good. So I'm appealing to you. I'm going to leave these brochures here. Did I do that? There's 3 brochures here. One says You're Not Alone, and that's the one that talks about the 44 suicides a day. This one talks about the 22 a day, and then this is the upgraded for that. And then this one, Healing the Unseen Wounds of War, right here, talks about the program. If you care to, I would challenge you to take a bus tour to Camp Hope to see it and really get a feeling for what happens there and how it's going. And then adopt, if you can, maybe a soldier that's been going through that and do some help them. So we took Jake Salzman, who had like 5 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he was blown up several times. He had traumatic brain injury, foot injuries, you name it. We adopted him, and we've been donating to him so he can get a car. So if you can find it in yourselves to do something like that, we'd appreciate that. Okay? So that's it. That's all I have for tonight. I thank you for listening. And I'm going to add one more thing in. One of the things that we do at our clubhouse is we had this guy come and do tamale sales, and then he would donate half of the profit to our club, and that's the money we're starting to give to Camp Hope. I'm going to give a free case of tamales to the cook for this December 2nd breakfast, and then I'm going to bring some tamales. And if you guys want to buy them, they're $15 a dozen. I will donate 50% of the profit to your club. Okay? All right. Anything else? Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Oh, Camp Hope is up by the racetrack, up on the Beltway. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
It's very easy for people
when I was a fortunate one. I was a workaholic, and I never wanted to be without a job. Just had a lot of them. But these guys, they get in a job and they're pathetic. They can't hold a job, they can't focus, they get fired from every job they get. So they get depressed. And they don't want to continue to be depressed, so they just drop out. And so a lot of these homeless veterans you see, they've dropped out. And Camp Hope is nothing but full of these guys that they're brought in from Houston, from under bridges and other places like that. They go out. When they first started, that's what they did. They did an outreach to Houston. They went and actually found these guys on the streets. Now Camp Hope is starting another camp in California and another camp in Florida. They're also going to start a female camp for female veterans. So any donations you can give, it's $142 a day. I don't know if I said that. It takes $142 a day to service one veteran going through the program. So, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Channel 2 Towers just opened a 161 unit place for homeless veterans in downtown Houston.
Very good.
Opened it today.
Very good. Very good.
For homeless veterans.
Okay, so my challenge to all of it is, you all know veterans and you all know other people. If you see anybody that you know that is suffering, give them one of these pamphlets. They're not alone. My wife was talking at the table. She talked to one gentleman that went through the program yesterday while we were there, and he was in court, and he was facing a 10-year sentence. The Department of Child Services had already taken his child away from him. His wife was gone, long gone. And so he lost his daughter to the Department of Public Safety, and he was facing 10 years of penitentiary. The judge said he found out somehow about Camp Hope, and he asked the judge if he could go. And the judge said, yeah, you can go, but you're going to face 10 solid years if you don't make it through the program. So he is now employed by Camp Hope as the marketing director or something like that. So, yes, sir.
Does the VA Medical Center provide any help?
Okay, I love the VA, guys. I know some people struggle with it. It's really hard to work with the VA down here because it's so darn busy. But if you just faithfully go into the program and don't complain, they'll love you because they get so many complaints. So when I was up in South Dakota at the VA up there, I was on a first name basis with everybody, and they knew my name and I knew theirs. It's just that the VA here is very busy. Yes, they do help. There are a lot of good programs at the VA for help. And they do get some of the guys do come from the VA that end up at Camp Hope. A lot come from the court system. And it's so prolific out there now that news is everywhere about this place. They're getting calls all the time from families saying, hey, my son is messed up and he needs help. Can you come and look at the program? Any other questions? Thank you.